The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
The dead baby joke from the year 2000, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yeah, so we're back with a movie just called Frankenstein.
As we talked 2007.
Yeah, and I've like specifically kind of split these up because like sometimes it feels like they'll start to feel the same, and it's also just kind of fun to every now and then get back to one. But with there being so many of them, I kind of forget I haven't seen them all, and I had not seen this one. I wasn't sure until I sat down, but I was really impressed with this. Like this one kind of surprised me.
Yeah, for a BBC production, this is or what is it? Is it exactly BBC or is it like Sky One or something like that?
I think it is BBC. I think it's like a BBC like TV movie kind of thing.
Right, exactly. For a TV movie, this is very impressive.
Yeah, like my DVD copy had like trailers for Doctor Who and stuff before it and everything.
Amazing.
So
this is heyday Doctor Who.
Yeah,
This is the second Renaissance, right?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, this is, we were talking just recently about taking the idea and kind of expanding on it. I guess specifically over on Patreon when we were talking about Creature, like having a different culture and sort of a different time frame, and but still sort of like adhering to the basic plot of the novel. And I feel like this kind of fits in that same vein where it's like it's clearly of 2007. It's all about stem cells, which was like a huge science buzzword at the time.
Right.
That I don't think people fully really understood what they were or what it meant or anything. And I think this is kind of like fuzzy on the science a little bit, but I think that this is definitely of its time in a way that was really kind of fun to look at.
Yeah, well, I would say that it is. It's also fun, but also kind of prescient, and I want to talk about that here in a moment. If you don't mind going over that.
Yeah.
So, but also another cool thing is that this ties the history of Frankenstein and its creation with the actual story itself, right? So it talks about there's a volcanic explosion that just occurred. It's basically covering the entire world in ash, basically giving us another year without a summer. Right?
Yeah, I like the first thing you see on the screen when the movie starts is it says, in 1816, a volcanic eruption filled the sky with ash, storms gripped the globe. That year, Mary Shelley conceived the story of Victor Frankenstein.
So the question is, so in this world, does Frankenstein, the story, exist? Or is this basically just a futurized retelling without that? So what's going on in this world, I wonder?
Yeah, because, instead of Victor, we have Victoria. We have a female scientist here.
Still have Henry Clerval, though.
Yeah, she's married to Henry Clerval. Do they ever say that her name is Frankenstein? Or she's divorced from Henry Clerval, so I don't know if she's like...
just assume it's Clerval nee Frankenstein, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And they do a good job. We have a Waldman. We have, a lot of, character names from the story.
We even have a William.
Yes, yeah, but this is obviously very modern. It's very biotech and everything.
So speaking of biotech and kind of where this story is going to go, not too many spoilers, of course, before we talk about it. But have you heard of the brain organoids?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this sounds like sci-fi. Apparently, it's real. But you need to check it out because this is our Frankenstein origin story. So what they're doing is that people were using stem cells to basically create these organoids just to see if they kind of could, right? To see if they could make specific organs. And it turns out that they've effectively synthesized a brain. And a little bit after they synthesized the brain, it started developing sensory organs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is a real thing. Basically, it's rudimentary eyes that detect light. After that happened, they're trying to teach it to play video games. And the last I heard, they were going to put it in items. I don't know if that's still sci-fi or, like, basically thinking computers, effectively, right? Literal thinking computers. So you may want to double check me. Maybe I accidentally picked up on some bullshit, but...
I mean, like, it feels like in the sort of, like, AI territory and everything, like, we're definitely... Which I feel like there's gonna be a Frankenstein-type story before long that really kind of incorporates all of this into something really interesting. It feels like just a matter of time before somebody latches onto that idea and really runs with it. You know, I guess we've talked about a couple sort of AI-related stories that are, you know, Frankenstein adjacent, but we haven't really had, as far as I know, someone like really like dig into it in a specifically intentional Frankenstein way. Like we had the artificial girl that was kind of about that, but you know, was completely within you know, a computer and everything.
Yeah, and we also had the creator or
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of those kind of like high tech versions of Frankenstein in the coming years.
So yeah, once we hear all about the Year Without a Summer or the new Year Without a Summer, we also just immediately go in media res, where we have the man who will be Waldman, that we'll find out is Waldman, yelling at Victoria about how she's, you know, we've created a monster, right?
And they name the monster UX, like he specifically mentions that, and they never really say what that stands for. I think of UX, you know, being like in IT stuff as like, you know,
user interface.
They never really go into what it might mean in this context, but you know, I mean, it may just be, you know, random numbers that they attach to projects or whatever. But yeah, you know, he's like, get out of here, you know, and so he runs one way, she runs out the other way. And we hear like some kind of violent struggle behind her. Yeah,
squelching noises, I think, is an appropriate term.
yeah, it does not sound good. And we just kind of see her looking terrified, and then we just get Frankenstein on the screen really big.
Well, we do get a vague shot of the creature's face in the glass as she's staring at it. Right?
Yeah, they do a really good job here of like, when you have a you know, creature design, there's that line where it's like, if we show it too much, it stops being scary. If we don't show it enough, it's annoying. They do a great job of this, of like teasing it slowly, and then we do see a lot of clear shots of the creature near the end where like you don't feel like you've been cheated. And the creature is cool. Like, it's a really good design for what's going on here.
It's unique, it's different, it's also a callback.
Yeah.
Points, you know.
Yeah, and it is CGI, and it's 2007, so it's not perfect, but like for the time and for what's going on, I think it looks pretty good.
Listen, if you're telling me that this CGI was in a made-for-TV movie, I wouldn't believe you. It's too good for it's a movie-quality CGI.
Yeah, definitely.
It is not The Shining from around the same time, right? With the topiary CGI that looks absolutely garbage.
Yeah. It's much better. I guess that BBC money's a little better.
You know, or they just know how to use it better. Less cocaine. Anyway, so we cut to 9 months earlier. We have the radio talking about the volcanic ash that's basically being spread across the planet.
And I did think it was funny 9 months earlier. You know, obviously we're talking about like
period.
Yeah. And we see, so Victoria is sitting in her car hearing this on the radio, and then a security guard knocks on the window. And she is like, are you okay? Your team's looking for you. And we see that she's kind of just like parked in the middle of the parking garage, like not in a spot, just like in the part where you're supposed to be driving. And she's like, oh yeah, sorry, I got distracted. Sure, I'm headed up. And so, you know, she goes and parks, and we see her like, you know, this is like a very industrial kind of science lab. So she's walking through like catacomb type halls with like pipes running along the ceilings and stuff. And
very industrial.
Yeah, she goes into a room that's like their lab. There's a bunch of scientists.
They're all chuckling.
Yeah, something really great's happened. So they show her we've got a heart in a jar. You know, classic Frankenstein stuff. We see this all the time. And the heart is beating very slowly, and everyone's so excited. They're celebrating. I think they have like champagne and stuff.
There's a lot of champagne in this movie. A lot of people are popping champagne just for no reason.
Yeah. And so yeah, they're excited that it's beating slowly. It's still not like what they're hoping for, but it's a step forward.
Yeah, this time there's only 7 beats per hour.
Mm-hmm.
So not enough to function off for a living being, but enough for this heart, I guess.
Yeah. And then we see, just like later, they're kind of escalating things. They're shocking the heart to see if they can get it to go faster. And they've actually got tubes hooked up to it where they're trying to pump blood in and out of it. And they're like, filming this all.
Yeah, Waldman's a little upset about this, though, because 1, no one told him. And 2, they're kind of escalating the testing a lot faster than they should be, right?
Yeah.
They don't have approval for that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this is common when it comes to like research science, is like, shit moves slow. Like you can't rush it. You got to make sure this is going to work. You're going to do this test over and over again before you move on to the next step. But like, so Victoria is kind of being placed as like sort of a renegade. Like like Victor Frankenstein. She wants to figure it out. She wants to get it done. She wants to get to the logical conclusion of what they're doing. Whereas Waldman is like, we got to take our time. We got to show our work. We got to prove this to the higher up so that we keep getting the money to actually do this.
She's racing against the clock as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll find that out pretty soon here, that she has an ulterior motive here. And she says, beyond that, like, just this heart, like, I'm afraid if we don't start doing stuff with it, it's going to start decaying. There's going to be tissue breakdown.
Then we're gonna have to create a brand new heart from scratch.
Yeah, she's like, I need your support on this. Like, I need you to talk to the higher ups and push this to go faster. And he's like, of course I support you, but we still have to operate within the system.
Right.
And then I think that takes us to sort of like the reveal. Victoria is like teaching math to this sick kid. And
right. I was like, is she just studying some random kid? What's going on here?
Yeah, at first I was like, maybe this is like a volunteer thing she does, or maybe she's doing research and also spending time with the kids or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then another doctor enters the room like later, and now Victoria is asleep in the bed with the child. So at that point, it's pretty clear, like, this is, a mom and her son.
Yeah, we also get James Purefoy, who I originally thought, I was like, hey, isn't this the guy who is the one of the first writers of Saw? No, he's a different guy. But
okay, gotcha.
What was it, Lin Wein or something like that?
Is it James Wan? Yeah.
Well, James Wan, and then who's the other guy?
Lee Winnell.
Lee Winnell, that's him.
Yeah, Lee Winnell, who went on to do the really great Invisible Man movie.
Yeah, Lin Wein is the comic book guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, so we meet Dr. Clerval, the child's father. So we have a divorced couple here, Victoria and Henry, and their son William, of course.
And it sounds like he basically walked out on them at some point to basically pursue his career. Yeah,
they kind of like get in an argument here, and he's like, I need to be involved in what's the decisions made about William, and she's like, you walked out on us, and he's like, no, I walked out on you. I still care about my son, but it was time for us to part ways. And I think she kind of accuses him of cheating. There's not a lot of specifics here. That's just stuff in the past.
Right.
This often happens when you have a kid with like a terminal illness, like it causes rifts within the family and everything. Yeah. But the doctor, the Williams doctor coming in and talking to Dr. Clerval and Dr. Frankenstein, is like, basically William is in bad shape. Like, he will need basically full organ transplant to survive. Like, everything's breaking down in him.
Right.
So obviously this is why Victoria is really pushing to do stuff fast.
She needs all the organs.
Yeah, she thinks she could possibly save her son.
Yep. Very interesting. So from there, after that, we also get Dr. Waldman bringing in a lady by the name of Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We really don't learn too much about Jane other than she is rich and is basically funding all the projects.
Yeah, she's some kind of higher up in the in the organization. We also find out that the company that Victoria works for is called the Windmill Research Facility, which I think is a really nice little nod back to the James Whale movies.
Especially what happens to the windmill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so they show, they're showing Jane what they've been up to and everything. And Victoria and Waldman are like, okay, so we've done the test with his heart. If things are going well, we think it's time to transplant into a human body. And Jane is like, no.
Hold up.
Definitely not. We are not there yet.
I like how she makes the joke of, especially in this climate, as ash is raining down around them.
Yeah. Yeah, and Victoria's like, a super volcano has nothing to do with a heart transplant. I need to keep going with my work. And
Right.
Jane's like, we got to focus on the public trust. Like, we've got to make them want this before we just unleash further science. Again, for those of you who weren't like paying a lot of attention to like the news and stuff in 2007, stem cells were super controversial. People were starting to use them to do tests. We were gonna,
stem cells were kind of our version of the body robbers.
Yeah, like the resurrection men kind of thing.
Yeah, resurrection.
Because the main place that you get stem cells from is fetal tissue, and so there was all this stuff with like that it's coming from aborted fetuses, and so we're encouraging abortions by using these.
Which is still a hot button issue.
Yeah,
20
of
years
course.
later.
Yeah. But there's other ways to harvest stem cells, and the funny thing is, I mean, like it was such a big thing at the time, and I still don't think we've really figured out everything stem cells are capable of, just because it was so touchy back then.
Yeah.
I actually, so like my girlfriend being in med school, I was like, so what's up with? Tell me about stem cells. I don't, like, what do you know about them? And like, apparently, like at various points in the development, like stem cell means a lot of things. I guess there are like pre-zygote. I think it's called a morula. It's just like a couple cells that have not even close to being a fetus yet, but every single cell is a stem cell. It could be anything. It can grow into a lung or skin or an eyeball or whatever.
And ironically, that's exactly what will happen here.
Yeah. Eventually, once you get to like fetal level stuff, there are still stem cells, but they are specialized stem cells. Yeah. So you can get like a pancreas stem cell, and all it can do is just make more pancreas cells, and so forth. So, again, going back to aborted fetuses, at that point, those are not like the particularly valuable stem cells. Those don't give us as much ability to experiment as like these really, really early morula stem cells do.
Right. And that's what everyone's going for, right? That's the gold.
Yeah, that's what's going on here for sure. And if I have any of that science wrong, that's all on me. I'm telephone gaming here information. So, but yeah,
we give approximate knowledge. That's our benefit, right? Close.
Yeah, it's mad science. It doesn't have to be too accurate, right?
Yeah. We have a lot, right?
Yeah. So I think at that point we have a scene of Victoria in her office crying, like she's just upset. This is her one way, like her only hope to save her kid, and like it's getting shut down by the higher ups.
Yeah, we need to prove that the stem cells could just easily duplicate the human organs. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going for at this point. We're going to scale everything up. Now she's talking to Andrew, her lab assistant. She's basically like, hey, we have one heart, right? That's probably not going to cut it. Let's make a bank of hearts.
Yeah.
A heart bank.
Yeah, if we can't start doing the transplants, let's at least show that this is capable of like mass production, that maybe that will, we can just have all these functioning hearts all beating. And of course her assistant, like, the classic genre movie line that we have to
reference to Jaws.
Yeah. We're going to need a bigger tank.
Yeah. So, but this also speaks to, I do appreciate that this is already talking about the issue with capitalism in the modern day, is that we have to monetize everything, right? Everything has to be monetized or it's worthless.
Yeah. Everything, that, I mean, I guess it's been like that, even like Manhattan Project times. Like when it comes to science, the only way you're going to get anything done, you're going to make any progress, is if somebody with the purse strings will give you the money. So it's got to it's got to have some capitalist purpose. It's got to be useful for the military or, big pharma, something like that. Like these are the only ways that anything ever gets done.
Yep. They go about creating the heart bank effectively by pouring some fluid or injecting some fluid into more fluid. Mm-hmm. But we do get a discussion about contamination and how we have to make sure everything's clean and clear That way nothing foreign gets into the substance and ruins it.
Right, yeah. So we kind of have like some montagey bits here where we see them doing science. We see Victoria visiting William. We eventually get a scene where Victoria's assistant is like, so the cells in the tank are diversifying.
Right.
We're not just getting hearts in there. There's other stuff going on, and we did not plan that.
Tissue, we've got lung tissue, we've got pancreas tissue, we've got all this stuff going on in here.
Yeah, and he's kind of freaking out, like, we've been trying to keep this all clean. I don't know what's going on. And Victoria's like, I might have introduced some other cells into the process without telling you.
Well, yeah, so she does steal her son's blood at that during that montage, as one of the phlebotomists just kind of leave it there when they get called away. And, so she takes that and injects it in there, so... This is effectively her son in the vat.
Yeah. She's like, I'm trying to get a whole different body of organs, a full bank for whatever is needed.
New baby.
Yeah. And of course, her assistant's like, this is not what we signed up for. You keep pushing and you're going to make them mad. They're going to shut us down. And she's like, no, this is what we're working for. Like, we have to keep pushing this or it's never going to be useful. I think then we get another scene with like, Henry and Victoria sort of arguing about what to do. The doctor wants to sign
DNR.
Yeah. And Victoria's like, no, we're not. You resuscitate him. You do whatever it takes. And
right, but Henry's like, oh, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. Henry's like, well, if he's not going to thrive, like we can't keep making him suffer. Just these are complicated issues that, of course, any couple's going to fight about. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. And it's also different people want different things, right? You always have the people that are like, if they can survive at any with any possibility, let them survive. And the other people are like, well, quality of life matters too, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not going to have a good quality of life, why does it matter? Why do they want to live?
Exactly, yeah. Victoria ends up storming out after this argument, and then we see the next day she goes into work, and again, her assistant Ed is like, so
they got a tooth now.
Yeah, I was cleaning out the filter, and there's a tooth. Why is there a tooth? And she's like, I'll figure it out. I'll take care of it. Don't you worry about it. And he's like, no, this is bad. Like the cells are not doing what we are telling them to do. They're doing whatever they wanted
to do. Yeah,
that's a big problem.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, he basically has his own little freak out, and she's like, I'll take care of it. And he ends up telling Baldwin about it.
Yeah. They X-ray the tank just so they can see everything in there. Because, it's like a submarine kind of shaped thing, with like a little porthole, but you can't quite see everything that's in there.
It's growing cartilage now.
Muscle, cartilage, there's all kinds of stuff going in there. And a lot more than what was in there before. And then Victoria, like while they're talking about it, Victoria looks, the porthole's like right next to her on the tank, and she looks over, and like a face kind of floats towards her, and then its eye opens, and she's like, oh, it's alive.
Right, we get the it's alive moment right here. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, we also get an urgent call from the hospital that her son is flatlining, so she's got to get there right now.
Yeah, so we get this great sort of another montage where she's rushing to the hospital. We see, the doctors and nurses in the hospital, doing the paddles. They're shocking him. They're trying everything to save William.
And we're also all the particles in the fluid.
Yeah, we're seeing life happening in the. It almost. I don't think this is literally what's happening, but there's sort of like a metaphorical, like William's spirit is leaving his body and going into the tank. Right. He's dying as the thing in the tank is coming to life.
Exactly. And he does end up dying, unfortunately. They're unable to revive him. The doctor's like, well, that's all we can do. We're sorry, bye, and just walks off.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe you stay there for just a little bit longer. I don't know.
A little bit of bedside.
Yeah.
And so we cut straight from that to William's funeral, of course. And, a lot of Victoria's coworkers are there. It's just it's a funeral, but Victoria goes over to Waldman at some point and is like, I think it's time we terminate the UX project. And he's like, right. What do you mean? Like, this is your whole big passion. Like, I can't believe you're saying that. And she's like, we did all those x-rays, like we've bombarded it with radiation, whatever's going on in there. Yeah, it's going to get worse than it is now. So we just need to terminate, flush it out. Then we get a scene, I think, with just like Victoria and Henry, this is sort of common, like that, they're divorced, they've had all their fights, but now William's gone, and they just kind of like have I think they're like drinking wine. They're just kind of talking or whatever. And she's just like, I was too late. It's done. There's no resurrection. There's no eternal life.
Yeah.
I can't save William. So like they kind of have a moment here. Like it's not like romantic or anything, but it's just like two people who still care about each other in some way, like grieving for this person that meant a lot to them both.
Right. Their one bond, their major bond between them. Right?
Yeah.
And of course, Henry does try to comfort her. He's like, "Listen, you're going to get back up on your feet. You're going to complete this project. Or complete your work. Everything will be great." And she says, "You did this to me." And he's kind of confused. He's like, "What did I do to you?" She's like, "You make me believe in you." So it's kind of like they're reconnecting to some degree.
Yeah.
She doesn't want it necessarily, but
right. And so then we cut back to the lab where Waldman and Jane are there together. And Waldman's like, I talked to Victoria. We're going to terminate the project.
And Jane's like, hold up. Wait just a second. Maybe not.
Yeah, now she's suddenly all in once she sees what's going on there. She's like, I want to see what happens next. I mean, you guys are on to something here.
Yeah. And he brought her in just so that she could get the knowledge going in the science community, right? Mm-hmm. That was his intention. But she's like, no, I'm bankrolling this. We're cashing in somewhere along the line. So continue the experiment. But just remember, the loss of this tank would be our greatest mistake. Mm-hmm. So let's not do that.
Yeah. And so then we end up in another montage where we see Victoria spending a lot of time at home, sort of mourning William.
William had a shed.
Yeah, he has like a little clubhouse shed behind the house. She goes in that and is just looking at the stuff he's got hanging on the walls. She watches some home movies. And then that's intercut with the experiments going on without her. They're continuing to work.
Right, where Waldman and Andrew are watching the structures become even more complex and more unified.
Mm-hmm. And eventually she goes to the lab and is like, "What? I thought we were terminating. What's going on? Like, you guys are still working without me?" And Waldman like, it's gotten complicated since you haven't been around, and I didn't want to bother you. I wanted to give you time to mourn and all that.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't terminate though.
Yeah, and he's like, and I wasn't sure. Like, can you handle terminating this now? Like, this is all that's left. And she's like, I buried my kid. Like, I can bury this. This doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
Right. Well, it just so happens that fate or something else intervenes. Lightning strikes, kind of knocks the power out of the whole complex, and the tank starts draining. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Victoria and her assistant had left. They were going upstairs or downstairs or something. Mm-hmm. They end up in an elevator that gets frozen because of the power outage. So they're stuck in an elevator while the tank drains, and we see inside there's something alive and moving.
Right. And this is really interesting. We get a shot of a guard and his guard dog walking up on an already open door when the creature hasn't been really released.
Yeah. And so then we finally the elevator opens and they step out and there is Waldman and another security guard, and they all go together to the lab. And when they get there, of course, they find the tank is empty. And there is a trail of like red footprints leading out. The stuff in the tank was some sort of red fluid. I don't know if it was blood necessarily or some kind of amniotic.
So they all are following these red footprints, and they hear this like gurgling, almost like Gollum sounds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they end up finding just a whimpering guard dog sitting, in the hallway by itself, and all of a sudden it just like vomits up all this blood and tissue.
Should we give a warning before that though, because people are sensitive to vomit sounds.
Yeah,
that may have made someone puke accidentally.
yeah, it's pretty well done. Like it's gross and like not over the top, but like yeah.
It's a nice bit of levity, right?
Yeah. So
where did that creature go off to?
It's just gone. So then we get a scene a little later where Victoria's assistant and Waldman are talking.
And the assistant's like, hey, there's a lot of material that we can't account for.
Yeah, he was like, I don't know exactly how much was in there because it was growing so fast and everything. But after we cleaned out all the drains, cleaned out all the fluid, cleaned up the stuff the dog vomited up, there's still quite a bit more that we don't know where it is. And Waldman's like, I don't really want to upset Victoria with everything else that's going on, so let's just tell her we're good.
Yeah, it's over. We've got everything we need. So all right.
Yeah. So they do. They go to her. They talk to her, and they're like, it's all over with. So we see her that night at home by herself. It's still storming out. She looks out a window and sees that like her front gate is like open. It's like a classic, like the wind is blowing from the storm and it's just kind of like banging on its hinges.
Right. We also get a shot of the creature, and it looks like almost the water is washing away some of its wounds. Almost like it's generating right here, right now.
Yeah. Of course, she doesn't see the creature, but like, yeah, it's out in the rain and everything's, like, and of course the gate kind of implies that it may be somewhere around, and they kind of like, they kind of play up like the horror angle a little bit here, like what's going on. We don't know.
Yeah, she has a dream about like the door to her son's shed being open.
Mm-hmm. And then when she wakes up, the window in her room is also open, and like, so it kind of keeps continuing this thing that like things are moving around without her knowing it, and what the motivations are there, we don't know yet.
Yeah, and we get this very interesting scene at the work where Henry comes back. He just kind of out of nowhere approaches Victoria, and he's like, hey, I know it's everything kind of failed, but I know you're not going to give up. You're not that kind.
Yeah.
So keep pushing on.
Yeah, the work's all that matters now. You should just keep trying.
Which is interesting. They just shows up to her work to encourage her, right?
Yeah. It's, what could that be about?
That's weird.
And then we see, so the geography here is a little murky. There's some sort of system of sewer pipes, drainage stuff under the lab that is connected to the lab.
They just so happen to be human height.
Yeah. Yeah, these are like, big pipes people can walk around in, like Ninja Turtle type sewers, just directly attached to this lab.
Right.
And we see down in the pipes, there's some, we see the creature. He's got like 3 fingers, so he's, not a normal human creation here.
Where do you find this like sewn together teddy bear? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me, like, Bane, has a teddy bear a lot in the comics and stuff. It reminded me of that. Like, it's just this really raggedy, really abused-looking teddy bear that this, giant monster child is kind of cuddled up with.
Yeah.
Then we see, in the lab, Victoria is giving a lecture about organ transplants.
Right, as an unhoused man just randomly runs up to the creature, sees its hand sticking out inside. You know what? I'm going to stab it.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, like I didn't know if he was trying to rob. He was like, "Oh, this person can't defend themselves," or if he's just like, "This is weird and I want to kill it." It's unclear, but there's kind of a tussle. The creature manages to escape, and then we have another scene with Victoria talking with her assistant, and he's like, "What are we going to start the next iteration of the UX project? What are we doing?" And she's like, "I've moved on. Like I can't focus on that anymore."
She's processed her grief.
Yeah. And then we go back to the drainage system where the creature has followed along until it like opens up and at like a park, and he's watching a little girl playing, and it obviously feels very much like Maria in the James Whale movie.
Very much so. And she says something really interesting as she rides her bike by and looks at the creature. She says, "Do you want to come out and play?" The creature doesn't really respond. She says, "I won't tell."
Yeah.
What does that mean? What?
Yeah, I mean,
Girl,
like,
call the cops. Let us know. Has anyone done anything to tell that you don't tell anybody about?
Yeah, that's a strange thing for a child to default to. I mean, like, clearly this creature is hiding and does not want to be seen by the public, but like, this girl is not of an age where she would understand that concept.
Right. She'd be like, "Hey, why don't you come out here and hang out?"
Yeah. The fact that she thinks that an adult might want her to keep secrets from other adults is a problem.
I almost want to go to the writer and be like, "Listen, if you've got to tell on somebody, you tell them, okay?"
Yeah. Yeah, it is strange. And so then we go back to the lab where Victoria is talking to Jane, and she's like, rather than full hearts, which are unpredictable, and we don't, this growth process, we're just going to start working on valves, heart valves.
That's
Those
more
are
controllable.
Yeah, and we don't have to make them do with it. Like, you have to get a heart to beat, but a valve just connects to an existing, already beating heart and just does its thing. We can transplant it into any body. Right now, we're working on it so that it won't be rejected. It doesn't need, like, the blood type matches that you do with, like, real human organs. So this will be great. And
then we go back to the little girl who comes back to play with the creature. The creature smiles, an awful smile. And it's like, oh, is this malicious? No, apparently not. But whenever she steps out, or it steps out, she freaks out. And, well, he has to make her be quiet, so he snaps her neck pretty brutally.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, this is a scene where it's like, this is really effective at, I mean, like that, we see this often where the creature kills a kid trying to quiet them, and different, but like this, you really get the sense that, one, he does not know what he's doing, he's not trying to hurt her, but two, it is brutal, it's painful, he is very much killing this girl. And I think they also, as we start to see more of the creature here, he is very childlike and innocent in a way that makes you feel bad for him, but he is also really ugly and scary. Like, it's not like Karloff where it's just like, oh, this sweet baby, like it is, he is gross and scary in a way that would make people frightened,
Right, like if you see this thing and you go, that is a monster.
Yeah. So I was just really impressed with this character design for, again, just a BBC TV movie. And in fact, I think the next scene is, once he's hurt the girl, of course, he knows that something has gone wrong. He hides back in the sewer, and he sees his reflection in a puddle, and is like, oh, this is why this girl screamed at me. I'm scary, which, again, is a scene we see often. And I think it works really well here, though.
Right. Then we cut to something that was a little oppositional imagery here, where we have, or opposing imagery, where we have the entire crew. They're now popping champagne because they're busting out valves like nobody's business. Yeah,
the valve idea is working really well. Everybody's celebrating. Everyone's excited.
Did you catch where Victoria kisses Waldman?
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, they have a little smooch right here.
Huh.
So it's like, is that the angle we're going with? Maybe we get a love triangle with her, Henry, and Waldman.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
It would be interesting. We don't go there.
Right.
Don't worry about that.
And so the next thing we see is Victoria leaving the lab after the celebration, a little tipsy, getting into her car and everything, and the I don't know, I can't remember if we actually see the creature or it's just like that camera angle where it's like,
we see eyes.
Okay. Eyes. Yeah, so we know he is watching her. He's seeing her leave. And like
almost like he's tracking down his own mom, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He is, effectively.
Yeah. And meanwhile we see that police have found the dead girl. They're setting up a big crime scene. They find the teddy bear that the creature was carrying. They also find a locket, which doesn't really ever do anything, but it is just kind of a nice little nod back to the novel.
To be fair, the police don't like, why do people feel the need to add a police procedural in certain aspects when it means nothing? Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but anytime the cops show up, it will lead to nothing.
Yeah, they're just kind of there to, I guess, raise the stakes. Like, the authorities are aware things are happening, but ultimately, we'll get to a thing where, like, oh, the situation with the authorities here is much different than you expect.
Right. Well, not only that, but it's kind of already handled. So the cops, and this cop particular, he has no effect. It's like, oh, maybe this guy will come back in and save the day. He'll be a help. No, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
And so then we cut from the crime scene back to Victoria at home.
She gets out of the shower with a glass of wine. You gotta love those shower wines, right?
Yeah, she's wrapped in a towel and kind of like walking through the house, And then she hears like a noise, obviously building tension here, and she's like kind of walking around the house trying to figure out, what's going on. Mm-hmm. And it's Henry. He pops out. We get a good jump scare out of him.
Right. And because he's not supposed to be there, she's like, all right, give me your key. Clearly you got in here with a key, so give it to me now. And he's like, I didn't have one.
I came by to congratulate you, but the front door was wide open, so I just walked in to check on you and make sure everything was okay. And somehow she's not like, what the fuck? She's just like, oh, okay. He hands her some flowers, and she's like, oh, thank you. And then
I wanted to thank you, congratulate you with these flowers and dinner.
Yeah. So, but they don't investigate the fact that her door was open,
wide open. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, if that happened in America, people would lose their shit. If that happened to me, I would be like, all right, we're casing the whole fucking house.
Yeah. If I come home and my door is open, I'm gonna go in I'm gonna go in closets. I'm gonna be looking under beds. Yeah. I'm going everywhere.
If I don't call the cops immediately, like, listen, there's somebody in there. You gotta get him out, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, instead he cooks her dinner. They sit down and eat together, and they're kind of reconnecting now. This, we had the previous scene where they were mourning together. Here, they're. I mean, like, there's some romantic vibes going on here. Like,
definite reconnection.
Yeah, and they kind of apologize for the way they acted as William was dying. Of course, they were in a tense situation. This makes sense.
Right. And I believe Henry's even like, hey, we created a special someone. I was hoping maybe eventually we could maybe get back together and create another one.
Yeah. And there's something, she compliments he describes himself as a whore in the kitchen and an angel in the bedroom.
So that means he's a lazy fuck. I mean,
yeah. I was like, what does this mean? I have never, it's like the, one thing in the streets and another in the sheets or whatever, but like, yeah, I do not know what that means, but
you're not giving yourself enough credit, man.
And so
either that or your cooking is absolute shit.
Right. And that scene ends with we're watching them through a window, like we're out, POV outside. Mm-hmm. They both have glasses of wine, and they pull the curtains closed, and then we see that it was the creature outside watching this.
Right, and they presumably they have some fun time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in fact we see then Victoria wakes up, she wakes up alone, walks into the kitchen, and there's a note on the refrigerator from Henry.
Right, and we do see that at this moment exactly, the fridge is fully stocked. Like, we're talking a pile of lemons for some reason. Sure.
Well, like, this is like, it's family stocked, not single woman stocked, like.
Yeah.
There's, you know how it is. Different.
Not even just couple stocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is full, we have 2 kids, not just one.
Right. And the note on the fridge, it basically is like, sorry, I had to run, I had to be at work early, but I'm really glad about how last night played out, and I hope you are too.
Oh, he does also mention, we skipped over it, there is the moment he talks about how he's a control freak, right? To a point. He had to control everything in their lives.
Yeah.
That will come back.
Right. So as she's reading the note, she kind of glances out there's the kitchen window above the sink or whatever, and the camera just lingers on William's clubhouse for a while. Everything looks fine, doors closed, looks normal, but the camera's just reminding you, hey, this is back here. Keep an eye on this building.
Right. Well, I thought the door was partially ajar, like just a little crack.
Okay.
Just a little crack.
Gotcha. Okay.
As if something had came in and shut the door behind it. But yeah, so then she falls asleep to. Which, man, this is depression. Like, she's falling asleep to her kid's birthday party.
Mm-hmm. More home movies, just, definitely a rough grief process here. And there's a weird thing here where, like, so when that scene starts, like, she is asleep, there's the home movies playing, and then, like, the tape runs out, and we get, like, kind of static or whatever.
Right.
But the static is not normal static. There's like stuff.
It's like the creature's face.
Yeah. Like there's something happening in the static, and it's like I don't. The creature doesn't seem to have sort of like any sort of technological or supernatural powers. He's just like a weird monster baby. But yeah, there's definitely, and so when she wakes up, like you see this happening on the screen in the background. She doesn't really notice it. It just seems like static to her.
Right.
She turns off the TV, walks into the kitchen and opens the fridge, and now it's fucking empty.
Like nothing's in there now.
Yeah.
This is the single woman or single person fridge.
Yeah, there's it's like a bottle of ketchup and like some, something splattered on like one of the shelves. Like it is empty.
Yeah. So she's obviously spooked, right? That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. So she starts walking around the house looking for other signs of disturbance. She goes into William's room and finds like broken toys scattered everywhere. And then glances out the window and notices that now the clubhouse door is wide open. And the storm is still happening, and it's doing the same thing that the gate was doing earlier, where it's like banging open and closed in the wind.
Right. So she goes down there, investigates the shed of the clubhouse, and sees that this is exactly her dream from earlier, which is like, are we going a supernatural bent with this? What's something happening? But then she also sees that something's playing with those toys.
Yep, it's like every electrical toy William has, all kinds of robots and things, everything that'll light up and make noise and spin and all that. All of them are going, and then the creature's just sitting there, in the middle of all these toys.
Of course, she just screams. The creature raises up. She screams at its face and scares off the creature.
Yeah, it kind of like. It doesn't really scream, but it reminds me of like E.T., when like the kid and E.T. they're both screaming, they both run in opposite directions. She jumps in her car, she calls her assistant first and gets his voicemail and is like, meet me at the lab, something's going on. So we see her get to the lab, she gets on the computer and is just, doing
checking
research.
Records.
Yeah.
Then we cut to some more unhoused assholes, or I'm assuming they're unhoused. They just decide, hey, let's set this creature on fire.
Yeah, I was really confused there because at first I thought like he had just like, was sitting next to a campfire and burned himself. But no, this is like guys tried to light him on fire.
Right.
But it
think
is our...
these people really exist. Like, unless they're really fucking psychopathic.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not out of the ordinary for possibly like unhoused people to rob each other if they're like, in dire straits or whatever.
But usually there's motivation, right?
Yeah, they're not just going to maliciously burn a guy for no reason.
Right. Mostly that's rich kids setting unhoused people on fire. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. That would have made a lot more sense in this scene if there were like punk kids playing like skateboarding in the sewers or whatever. That would have been a more like accurate sort of thing.
Right?
Yeah. But regardless, this is sort of our fire bad moment. The creature kind of panics and is trying to put the fire out. He manages to like catch one of the guys and kills him. Yeah. Which good for him. The other guys run away in terror when they see that, this weird looking guy is tough. He can fuck us up.
Right.
And then we go back to Victoria, who's continuing her research, and then the main sort of security guard that we've seen several times, he comes in and is like, hey, what's going on? Do you need anything? And she doesn't even hardly answer. Like, she is just in the research mode.
Yeah. She also calls Waldman and says, hey, call me back whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, I think the UX project survived. And we see that the guard has like left or is starting to leave the room, but he hears this. And like it's one of those where like you notice that he heard it, like that something's going on there. He's paying attention to what's happening in the lab in a way that just a 9 to 5 security guard is not going to care what's going on in the lab. It's really
interesting. But we also get just a random spy with a literal spy glass.
Yeah. And then we see Waldman listening to the message from Victoria and is like upset, like, oh shit, things are, something bad's happening.
Right. And he sees that same spy basically getting eaten by the creature as he looks out of his window.
Yeah. So then we see Victoria's assistant. He has gotten there and is like wandering through corridors and runs into the creature.
I'm gonna be real with you, man. This is not something that I would do. This is no offense, but this is the most white person shit
Yeah, which I was a little surprised because like her assistant is like an Asian guy.
Right.
It's I think Benedict Wong.
Yeah.
Who's he's been in quite a few other things.
MCU.
But like, yeah. Is it? He's the
he's Wong.
Oh right, yeah, from Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing Baby Wong though, because here he's like skinny and like he's not fat, I wouldn't say, but he is
bulky.
Bulky. Yeah.
But yeah, he like he's like, all right, calm down, fella, and he's like trying to get close to him.
Right, but then he flips his lighter in front of the thing's face, like right in front of its face.
Mm-hmm.
He gets exactly what he deserves.
Right. Yep. Yeah, of course we know the creature just got burned, so he does not like to see the fire. He attacks him. Meanwhile,
it's almost like he eats Andrew or the assistant's face, right?
Yeah. I mean, we don't like get a close up on, but yeah, like something really violent happens here. Like he is.
Well, I mean, it's like from what I saw in the CGI, it looked like his mouth almost like didn't shoot out, but latched on to the assistant's face.
Yeah, there's a couple of times where we will see that his, like he can kind of unhinge his jaw or something. Like his mouth is bigger than it just looks. For like it's capable of stretching.
Yep, sure is. Take that out of context.
Meanwhile, Waldman has arrived. He finds Victoria and is like, "It's we got to get out of here. We got to get you to safety."
Right. Well, we basically cut back to the beginning, right, where he's saying that
we made a monster. We got to, and she's like, you knew that it was still around and you hid it from me. And he was like, I was trying to protect you. And I really didn't think that this could happen, but
yeah, this got out of control.
Yeah, we got to get out of here. So, as you said, this is the beginning. So they part ways. Waldman goes after, in the direction that the creature is.
He gets squelched.
Mm-hmm. So he gets killed while Victoria's running to hide.
But that guard comes out of nowhere and he's like, listen, I got you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can help you. And the creature comes rushing towards them and the guard tasers him.
No, like the creature's underneath them. And the guard just jumps over the rail, superhero style, and tasers the creature.
Right. Yeah. And he tasers him. He immediately gets out a walkie-talkie and is like, all right, the creature's it's incapacitated, sending back up to secure. He's like in full SEAL Team 6 mode. Like this is not just a regular ass mall cop security guard.
No, this dude's something else, right?
Yeah.
Turns out he's a lot of something else because basically it's revealed that he was a spy for Henry, but he orders everything burned. Burn all the bodies, burn everything.
Yeah, because like Henry has come in now, and he's like, I want the files related to the UX project on my desk. Yeah. Everything else here destroyed, and also remove any records that Victoria was here. She has nothing to do with this.
Right. We're basically So it's like, oh, he's the government, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. So we see the two of them in a van.
He's like, we always said I was a control freak. Well, let me be in control now.
Yeah. And she's like, wait, you've been spying on me this whole time? And he's just like, and kind of hand waves it a little bit. And then we go to the cops later. They find several bodies burned in the sewer, in the drainage system or whatever.
Man, I'm still so annoyed that they're acting like this is a thing, right?
Right. Yeah, they're like, we gotta find the monster that did this.
Oh no, yeah. Right. Jeez. But yes, then we. By the way, did you notice that there was a New Hope pamphlet for the stem cell research?
Yeah, there's like a
Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, because like there's an older cop who seems like completely oblivious, and a younger one who thinks he's gonna solve things.
Yeah,
and he notices that pamphlet that's like partially burned, but at the bottom you do see Victoria Frankenstein, and he's like, maybe I should look into that.
Right. Then we cut to Clerval Biotechnology, where Henry they bring in the guard who has Victoria, and that's when we find out this guy is in fact working for Henry the entire time, always has been.
Yeah.
And she's like, am I a prisoner now?
Yeah. She says, like, is the UX the only prisoner here, or me too? She's very upset. She feels like Henry's been manipulating her whole life and using her and everything.
Well, she even asked, did you seduce me just to get to this? And he's like, no, hell no. Why would I do that?
Yeah. And so then the guard escorts her to a room where it's like one of those kind of observation mirror type rooms.
Where they're implanting control neck bolts into the thing.
Yeah, which I thought that was kind of a nice touch. Like, a nod back to the Universal movies.
Right. And they also put like a little cap on, literal flat cap on the creature's head.
Yeah, and they're like, we got this stuff from the government or from an intelligence agency. They don't specifically say CIA or FBI.
Well, they created it for the intelligence service. Mm-hmm. Or MI6, is that it?
Oh yeah, I guess because it's England, but and Victoria's like
impossible. Wait a second.
I think it's MI6. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Victoria's like, who are they using this stuff on? And Henry's like, people.
Right? They're the government, baby. What do you think they're doing?
Yeah.
Just remember, if you don't think the government would, yes, it would.
Yeah. So then we have a scene where Henry is talking to Jane. So they're in cahoots as well. And they're like, so what are we going to do with this thing now that we have him? And it's like, well, I mean, we could make more of them and use them as organ farms. Maybe we can train them to be soldiers. Who knows?
You have the control thing. That might work.
Yeah. And then Henry, a little later, finds Victoria, and he's like, the UX is awake. Do you want to go see him?
Right.
So they go together to this room where he's being held, and he is in, like, the most unpleasant looking, like, device it's not a cage, it's like a chair with various bars at points so that he cannot stand up.
It's like a toddler's, what are they called?
Like a pack and play kind of thing?
Well, I was going to say more like when you go to a restaurant, a high chair.
Oh,
it's like a high chair, right?
Yeah. So there's like, he's sitting down, but there's like a bar across his lap so that he can't stand up and like, going across in front of his chest and everything.
Right, like you would do with a toddler. Or maybe even a pack and play would be even more appropriate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's not in a cage, but he is unable to move. Yeah. And is like, shaking in fear, like he's, he doesn't know what's going on. He's very scared.
It turns out they also have this ultraviolet trigger is what they call it, which sounds dumb. Because what if he gets exposed to sunlight? But
right.
Apparently it's supposed to effectively paralyze the limbs but keep everything else moving.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, so this is part of the neck bolt thing. Henry tests it. And, the creature goes from being, like, shaking and, like, upset to suddenly just, like, kind of collapsing, sort of unconscious.
Yeah, and that pisses Victoria off. She's like, you're torturing this thing for no reason.
Yeah. And Henry, like, she and Henry, like, step out into the hall, and she's like, if you want me to be part of whatever you're doing here, you need to clothe him, you need to give him dignity. Like, we have failed him once, or she says, I failed him once. When I first saw him, he looked like a monster to me. I treated him, but I'm not going to do that again. Like, this is my responsibility, and I'm going to treat him like a living sentient being, which I thought was really cool. Like, we see Victor in every version of Frankenstein, basically, seeing the monster, being like, oh, this is a gross monster. I want nothing to do with it. Yeah. And he never recovers from that. But this
he never accepts responsibility, but she does.
Yeah, this feels more real, where it's like, he freaked me out, I acted rashly, but now that I've had time to think about it and evaluate my own behavior, I'm going to do better.
Right. And I do like how whenever she goes back into the room, the creature actually screams at her. Mm-hmm. A little bit. But he's more mad than scared, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how dare you?
And yeah, so then we see, like, later, she's like working with him. He's still chained up in the chair thing, but he is wearing clothes. And
we see its face.
Yeah, she's like, we get this, we're seeing both of their faces, like they're sitting really close to each other, and we're seeing, her look at him and him look at her. And all of a sudden, the acting there's really good and very subtle. Something changes in Victoria's face where it's like, it's almost like a maternal response to the creature.
She recognizes something in this creature. Mm-hmm. Well, she recognizes his face because apparently to her it looks like her son. But her son didn't have eyes that big or a face that wide. But, whatever.
Yeah, she ends up going, like, as soon as she sees it, she's kind of, like, taken aback. And Henry thinks something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Guards rush in, drag her out. And he's like, what happened? What's going on? And she's like, so when I was trying to use UX as a way to save William, I may have put some of his DNA into the tank, and I think this is like basically a monstrous clone of our son.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, right? There's no other way to say it.
Yeah. So we have to set him free. We cannot have him chained up. This is our child. And Henry's
he says
like
some bad words here, though.
Yeah. 2007. I was trying to think about this, like,
it was pretty common about that time.
Yeah. So she says the R slur, which I feel like I've been really impressed with our society as a whole. Like, this is the quickest I've ever seen something go from like a commonly used word to a completely erased word. Like, people do not say this word anymore, which is great.
Yeah. If only we could do that about other words, right?
Yeah. And here, I mean, it makes sense. Like, in the context, she says, like, we have to free him. Keeping him chained up like this would be like keeping an R-word child chained to a bed, which is true. Like, this is a child who has, some sort of mental disability of some form. Like, this is
as fucked up as it sounds. That was a common practice, right? Because a lot of times you couldn't control individuals with that.
Yeah, so, in this context, it makes sense. Obviously, not a word we like to hear now, but, I did think it was kind of interesting just thinking, like, wow, that was, like, not even 10 years ago, or not even 20 years ago, I guess. Right. But, yeah, good thing, sometimes we do get things right over time.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But she does decide to come back for round 2, and this time she's actively releasing its restraints. Mm-hmm. And she's trying to keep it calm. But she's acting very motherly towards the creature. Yeah,
and this isn't like an illicit thing. We have Henry and the main guard guy are watching from the observation room.
The guard's already vested up, though. He's ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And everything seems fine. The creature is released. He's not attacking Victoria. She gives him a toy. He starts to kind of play with it, but Henry's like getting anxious, like, what's going to happen here?
And then the toy squeaks.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of scares him. And he just kind of like reacts. He doesn't attack Victoria, but he kind of just like in a defensive way. I think he kind of shoves her or something.
Yeah. He smacks her arm.
Yeah.
Smacks it away. That's when the guard comes in and basically uses the ultraviolet trigger to freeze the creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we cut away from that to the police who are looking at the DNA evidence. And
God, dude, these guys are so worthless. Yeah. Sorry.
So they find on the burned corpses that there were 3 burned bodies, but they found 5 sets of DNA there.
Right.
3 matched up with
the killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like, one belongs to Victoria Frankenstein, who we know worked in the lab, and the other DNA we assume is the killer, and it's got some similarities to Victoria.
Almost like it could be her kid, but her kid died several months ago.
Yeah, he was only 8 years old, and he's dead, so he can't possibly be a killer. What's going on there?
Weird.
And then we cut to Henry. He's on like a Zoom call, some sort of meeting with Jane and several other sort of higher-ups that we've not met yet.
Is that Richard Brake in the corner?
I didn't notice him, but that seems like something he would be in.
Right. It probably wasn't. It's probably just my imagination. I didn't see him in the credits, so I'm putting Richard Brake where he doesn't belong. Much like Rob Zombie. Sorry.
But like the thing going on here in the meeting is all the higher ups are like, we want to know what's going on with the project, and Henry's kind of like trying to like backburner them. He's like, this is Victoria's project. She's still actively participating. We're not quite ready to share our findings.
Right, and he says instead, let's talk about the control device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's kind of trying to distract them, like, I don't want to talk about the UX thing. And, they are not happy about that.
Jane especially.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm pissed.
Yeah. And so we see a little later Victoria and Henry talking. And she's like, I'm not going to give up on him. Like, I'm gonna do right by my creation. This is my responsibility. I'm gonna take care of him. And Henry is sort of coming around. Like, we've had this whole thing with, like, he seems manipulative, like he's been behind all this in the background, and is trying to use this creature or whatever. But like between the scene with the higher-ups and this now, we see, like, maybe he's seeing this as his child as well. You know, he's kind of just nodding. I think they even kiss at the end of this scene. Like, they're using this as, you know, like Henry said, maybe we'll have another child. Now they do. So we see her go back into the room with the creature, but this time the guard goes in with her. He's not just observing from the other room.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Henry's like, yeah, you're not going in by yourself anymore.
Mm-hmm. But I thought this scene was really, really great. Like, it felt very maternal, very, like, parent. Like, she goes in and comes up to him, and she shows him her arm where he hit her, and is like, you hurt me. Yeah, like, and, you know, he's calm, and he, like, reaches up and touches the bruise very gently, like, you know, sort of apologizing in his own way for this.
Right. She's like, I'm going to set you free, but just don't freak out again, okay?
Yeah. So this time, instead of a toy with an unpredictable sound, she has some of those board books, you know, the, like, really hard cardboard books that babies read. Oh, yeah. They're flipping through it. He gets to a page. It's just like various, like, landscapes, and he gets to a page that has the sea, and he gets really excited. Like, it's pretty. He's really into this picture, and she's really, like, enjoying this moment with her child. Like, he likes the sea. It's, you know, it feels like a parent, especially, like, you know, I've been around a lot more parents in my life in the past, you know, year or so, and when you see a kid hit a milestone, like, you know, the first step or whatever, it's just like, oh, he's, you know, everything's okay, he's growing, he's developing, like, everything is good, and, like, you really get that sense from her that she's like, oh, he's gonna continue to grow, like, this really could be my child in some way.
And then we cut to Henry, though, who has the most complicated reaction to this of all, I think. It's a mixture of, one, he's happy that he kind of has his family back. Mm-hmm. Two, he's really fucking annoyed because he knows he's about to lose it immediately afterwards to Jane. And it's like, just the complicated look on James. James Purefoy is a great actor because he could pull it off like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, you know, this is great. Like, you know, she's like, he can think. Like, this is really, you know, I think he's going to keep learning. This is good. And he's like, yeah, I'm just afraid that I'm not going to be able to maintain control of this situation for much longer. I don't want to let you down, but, like, there are people above me who have way more control than I do.
Right.
And then, so he leaves his jacket on purpose, right?
Well, yeah. So he's like, I'm going to go now, but, you know, I'm leaving my jacket here.
Mm-hmm. He's got, like, you know, like a blazer or whatever. He leaves it just, like, lying on a table, and he walks out, and she, you know, Victoria looks down, and in, like, the breast pocket is his, like, ID badge to, like, get into places in the building.
Right. And as he's leaving, just to kind of tell you what's going on, the guard stops him and is like, hey, what's up? Where you going? And he's like, oh, I have to leave the building. Mm-hmm. Just generally, I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
And he's like, why? Plausible deniability. That's why.
Yeah. And the guards, or, you know, Henry's like, since when do I need a reason to leave? Like, I'm in charge here, right?
Yeah, also his name's on the fucking building.
Yeah, but I think that this sort of indicates that, like, this guard answers to a higher power, and, you know, he could put Henry down if that's what he's, you know, told to do. Right. But, you know, he does let Henry go. Meanwhile, we go back to the police. They're now watching security camera footage from the night of the murders.
Right. And they see this van that they got into.
A van leaving the crime scene, and they're able to enhance and read the license plate on the van perfectly, and they look it up and they're like, oh, this van belongs to Clerval Biotech, so we should probably go check that out.
Yeah. Anyway.
So then we go back to Victoria, who has used her ID badge to get down to where the creature is.
Well, she has a lab assistant who's like, or a new lab assistant that's like, hey, I'm not supposed to let you go anywhere.
Yeah, I got to go in there with you, or because she says, hey, can you go get me? I can't remember some, you know, yeah. And he's like, no, I can't leave you alone. And she's like, do you want me to go get Henry and make him give you permission to leave me alone? Because I can do that.
Right.
And he's like, all right, fine. Like, yeah, I don't want to piss off the boss by, I gotta be nice to the boss's wife, more or less, So he does leave. She goes into the room and instantly releases the creature.
But the guard sees this on the camera.
Mm-hmm. And he tries to use the neck bolt thing, but I don't know if it's like you have to be within a certain range or something, because it doesn't work. The creature manages to get up onto the roof. Victoria follows after him and also gets up on the roof.
The alarm gets sounded. Mm-hmm. It's all hands on deck now.
Yeah, so now we got like this really, this sort of like climax that's pretty intense. So they're up on the roof. We see tons of cop cars surrounding the building. They're up several floors, but down below they see all these cops. And then they also see a helicopter circling overhead, and Victoria's trying to calm the creature down. This is a lot of stimulation for this, giant baby, basically. So he's overwhelmed and kind of scared.
Listen, I would have the exact same reaction. Okay?
For real.
But also, we don't get a shot of who's flying the helicopter, so it immediately told me, oh, this is Henry. He's here.
Yeah. For a second, I thought it was more cops, but the helicopter lands on the roof. Henry rushes out and is like,
it's like there's nowhere else for us to go.
Yeah, the world is going to judge us for creating a monster. I don't know what to do. And so he gives her a tranquilizer gun, and he's like, you have to shoot it. Yeah. And so she does. She knocks out the creature, and him
and his crew load the creature up on the helicopter.
Yeah, so they take off right as the cops have like run up the stairs and rush out onto the roof.
Yeah, the one cop who actually cares about doing his job sits there, and we have a reactionary moment between him and the guard. It's kind of like, where did they go? That's weird.
Yeah. And so then we cut to like a little later. We see UX, and now we're like, we've kind of pretty much seen him all together, but now that we've kind of gotten past the horror aspect, they're not trying to obscure him as much. He's just this big child sitting on the beach, watching the waves, looking up at the seagulls. Rocks. Yeah, it's really sweet. This is, a beautiful moment. It feels like, okay, they've escaped. He obviously loved the beach in that book.
It's very much like a family is going to the beach. Mom, dad, and the baby. Yeah,
we see Henry and Victoria kind of like standing off a little ways from him, just watching him, appreciating their child being happy. And Victoria's like, so how long do we have? And Henry's like, not long, I don't think. And he's like, I really miss our little boy. And then we see off in the distance a whole line of black SUVs coming towards the beach. So obviously it's the
specifically the guard, the one guard that has been in this movie ever since the breakout, right?
Yeah,
full SWAT gear.
Right. Yeah.
And Henry's like, I got to go do what I got to do. I'll be back in a second, or maybe I won't. Who knows?
Yeah. And he's like, I made a deal. I think I can take care of it. So, yeah, Henry goes to talk to the guards, and he's like, this wasn't the plan. Like, what are you all doing? And the guard is like, we're past the plan now. You know, we're taking her, we're taking the UX, we're taking her back to our facility.
We don't want to have to do this, boss. Just let us do it. And he's like, nobody's taking my family away. Not again.
Yeah. Yep, so the guard just pulls out a gun and just shoots Henry in the head, just kills him. Like,
yep.
And so now we have like a whole line of guards approaching Victoria and the creature, and like they're just kind of getting close. And then we just cut to later. Now those same cops are on the beach investigating a crime scene. They see Henry lying there dead
with a gun in his hand, basically telegraphing, "Hey, this is what you're supposed to report this as."
Yeah, the sort of like older, sort of oblivious cop is like, well, that the DNA matches the killer also, so he must be the killer. And the other cop's like, no, but the killer DNA also matched Victoria, so that's not how this works. That can't be right. You got to have both of their DNA together.
Yeah.
And the older cop's like, suicide, case closed. Like let's not.
We're done with. See, here's what I got from that. Like, what I got was, he basically was already given his marching orders to find the body on the beach and report it as a suicide.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
And that's the end of that, by the way. That's the whole cop storyline done.
Right, yeah. And then we see off in the distance, Jane is there watching the cops have their conversation. So, like, she is actively making sure this goes the way that they want it to go.
Right. Everything's going to plan, right?
Yeah. And then we see a little later, we've got, I think the camera starts like just this middle of nowhere kind of field, and we see that they've moved the project to an underground facility like in the middle of nowhere. It's not like in the city anymore. And Victoria is continuing to teach the UX.
Well, she's teaching it like she taught her son how to do math.
Mm-hmm. And Jane is watching from an observation room. And we get this sort of this moment where Jane is talking to the guard, and she's like, this creature is, it's a one-of-a-kind thing. It's all alone in the world.
Yeah, they can never leave this facility.
Yeah, it's learning now, and once it becomes a little smarter, is it going to revere or despise its creator?
Yeah, well, love her or hate her.
Mm-hmm.
And the creature, at that moment, the creature apparently is done learning its math because it stands up, and now it's significantly larger and looming over Victoria.
Yeah. So it leaves us on kind of an interesting cliffhanger where it's like, Victoria and the creature, are they bonding? Is it going to be, it's kind of like there are certain animals that you can kind of train when they're babies, but when they get big, like
humans.
Right, yeah. Or, like you think of like tigers and stuff like that. Like tiger cubs, they're basically just like big kittens, but eventually they become tigers. And they may still respond to you the way a pet would, or they may just claw your face off. Like, you don't know.
Right.
So is Victoria in danger, or are Victoria and the UX going to be able to work together and escape? It's unclear. But, we have this nice moment where, at least for now, things seem okay. Like, they're obviously trapped in a facility, but at least they have each other.
Yeah. I think that's also kind of, I don't know if I would call it necessarily a British type of family dynamic at the end where it's like or maybe it's just human in general, right? Like when your kids grow up, a lot of parents are afraid they're going to resent them, but then again, a lot of kids grow up and they do resent their parents for things.
Yeah.
So just kind of an interesting thing. Also though, why did Jane get the win?
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely the most frustrating part about this, is this sort of minor villain that we've not really had much run-ins with is ends up being the puppet master and the winner.
Right. Don't get me wrong, of course the house always wins in the end, but that's I don't know, that's kind of a weird way to reinforce that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate this movie where the creature doesn't die and sort of is able to thrive. It's not the ideal environment for him, but he's at least not dead, and he at least has a caring parent who is working with him and stuff.
We baited the sequel, right?
Yeah, which of course I don't know that they ever were intending one. They just wanted kind of a really interesting cliffhanger to kind of chew on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this feels very modern. It feels like an appropriate interpretation even now, but I feel especially for that period of the 2000s when we were...
it was more of a hot button issue, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there were some things about it that kind of reminded me of Unwieldy Creatures, with the sort of creating a child. Of course, obviously this lacks a lot of the queer angles and stuff in it, of course, especially for 2007, but this sort of melding of modern science, and the goals and intentions of modern science, whereas they weren't trying to bring back the dead. They're trying to extend life in ways that we currently are still trying to do it. Transplants, ways to make our bodies last longer when they continue to try to break down.
You got to prevent those telomeres from fraying at the end, right?
Yeah, so this one's interesting. I think this one is absolutely worth checking out. It like you said, it still feels very up to date now, and it's not a fun movie, but I think it's an interesting and compelling movie, and I found the creature very sympathetic. and definitely an interesting portrayal that we haven't quite seen before.
Yeah, I mean, it does have a little bit of made-for-TV-itis here and there. There are a couple of melodramatic scenes, like we mentioned earlier, namely with the dog coming upon the open door for whatever reason and finding its way and eating all the whatever. And then I think the ending kind of suffered a little bit from that. But, I mean, otherwise, it's interesting. It'll get you thinking, and it is very relevant, for sure, even to today.
Yeah, and as far as TV movie stuff, like, the romance, like them kind of coming back together, feels like it could have been like we need a romance plot.
Right.
But I
no,
think
it made sense, yeah.
Yeah, it mattered. Like, we had to have the romance sort of kind of resurrecting, I guess, to get to the end. We needed the stakes there at the end so that Henry was on board. He was saving his family. And yeah, it felt earned. Like, they kind of went back and forth. They they had the moment where they slept together, and then she found out that he'd been manipulating her work and stuff, and she was upset again, but it felt real. It felt like a couple trying to figure things out with a lot of complicated stuff going on around them.
And I think the fact that they've reiterated a couple times that this guy is a control freak, that also helped lend credence to the very end, where it's like, even when it looked like he wasn't in control, he really was.
Yeah.
So, I like it.
So definitely check this one out if you haven't seen it. I know I don't think it's streaming anywhere right now, but it is, like, you can find DVDs of it and stuff. And maybe if you have access to BBC type streaming stuff, which I know they do have a platform. I've not been on there, but you may be able to catch it there. But yeah, this is definitely one of the more like fun or like more interesting ones that I think I'm going to be thinking about for a while that we've done in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely gets those synapses firing for sure. All right, Anthony. Well, anything else we got to say about it?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, fair enough. So, I mean, we've discussed a childlike creature this week. So maybe we can do something, a little bit furrier, a little bit cuddlier next week, because we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah, so this is one that a couple of you all have reached out and suggested we do, and I had seen it a while back and was like, maybe so, and then I watched it again recently, and it was like, man, yes, this is for sure a Frankenstein 100%.
Movie. Twice over in one movie.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, like, it's a really powerful movie, and thankfully, being it's part of the MCU, but we don't need to discuss, like, 14 movies to get into it. So
more or less a self-contained story.
Yeah. So this one will be fun. Like, we haven't really done a lot of like comic book movies here on the main feed or comic book related stuff at all. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this one because it's a tearjerker, but it's a fun one. Yeah.
I think can we spoil the dog doesn't die in this one though? So that people will have a reason to come back.
Yeah,
you can cut it or not.
We've had some good we've had dogs in the past couple movies, and they've all been okay. So we're going to continue that streak.
Thank gosh. All right. Well, anything else we got to say about it?
I think that's it.
All right. Where can they find us, Anthony?
So you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. We're also over on YouTube. And you can also find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where, as I mentioned earlier, we're watching the Creature series and really, really enjoying that. And we're also reading some comic books over there as well. We're doing the Punisher Frankencastle series. So there's a lot of fun stuff over there. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Well, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.